Thanks for having me here today. Really excited to be talking to all of you. I think, really excited that we get to have this virtual conference and excited to talk to you about scaling your dApps to reach your first 10,000 users. Before jumping into it, though, I do want to give a little bit more of a background about, how my journey into blockchain came to be. So before joining blockchain, I studied computer science. I started building, systems for the Department of Defense, and I worked in marketing tech for about 8 years. But as I was transitioning into blockchain, consensus was a huge part of my transition, mainly because as I was thinking about trying to tinker and build applications, I discovered that Consensus had Consensus Academy to help developers understand the landscape better. And by understanding the landscape better, it helped me understand, all that was out there that was tinkering on the Ethereum system. But additionally, some of the friction points that you would expect to receive, like as you're developing as a dApp developer. And those friction points were things such as that touch things within user experience, community growth, and infrastructure. And I'll get into more about that later. But because of all those friction points, one of the things that I decided to do was potentially stop developing and come back to blockchain maybe 2 or 3 years later. But instead, later that summer, I ended up meeting Jack O'Halloran. And Jack O'Halloran was building out SKALE Labs and decided to tell me about his vision for where SKALE Labs fits in to the blockchain ecosystem and how it can help dApps scale to increase their user growth. So he convinced me to join his initiative and help out with building infrastructures. That way I can also help other developers that were experiencing similar issues that I had experienced about 2 years ago. Now at SKALE Labs, I get to continue to grow in the blockchain space, but also I talk to so many different dApps projects within so many different verticals. And yes, there's gaming and DeFi, but there's also unexpected verticals such as the wine industry. Of course, marketing tech fits in there too, but there's just a plethora of people building within the blockchain ecosystem in so many different environments. Now, through all of this, definitely looking forward to just like helping dApp developers understand how they can scale their dApps to increase their user growth. And so that was my journey into the blockchain space. And so I'd love to talk more about blockchain scalability next and how we could potentially help that to, help you out in that space to increase that user growth that you're looking for. Now, there's not a shortage of problems within blockchain scalability, but I'm going to focus on just 3. The first one is user experience, second one, infrastructure, and the third one is community. When talking about user experience as a dApp developer, the top issues that you end up coming across are going to be onboarding flow, transaction speed, and gas costs. So how does this map to getting more users? Well, as a user that is interacting with everyday applications, when I'm thinking about onboarding flows, today it's frictionless. I have an email, I have a password, I log in, and I'm good to go. In blockchain, that was switched. You now have to understand how a wallet works, get that connected to the application, understand how to send transactions, and then suddenly there's more friction to just get onboarded. Not only that, but dApp developers, as we're trying to build applications to create a good user experience, we want it to be fast, or at least as fast as what users are expecting today. Now, currently, that's not the case in blockchain. And so what happens is we're relying on our end users to have to be patient and wait every time they interact with the blockchain. And not to mention, instead of having to pay a subscription fee, let's say for an application, let's say they paid $10 for an app, they don't expect to have to be charged any other time after that. Within blockchain, one of the user experience issues that we've created is that every time the user interacts with the blockchain, there's a gas cost. So there's this minor fee that they have to pay just to log in, just to store data, just to view that data. All of that ends up adding up to being a really negative user experience, which, as you can imagine, doesn't lead to your users wanting to be sticky and stay with you to grow your user base. But outside of user experience, there's also this infrastructure problem where, as a dApp developer, I want to make sure that I'm building an application that's really plays to privacy, security well, does decentralized storage, and allows me to interact with other projects within the space very easily. And as an end user, I would expect that my privacy and security is upheld just as with any other application. But one of the things that's really key here, and it doesn't seem like it really fits within scalability, but it does, is community. Because in the blockchain space, one of the things I learned is that there's a huge emphasis on building community, meaning that as we're building and creating new applications for blockchain, we want to make sure that we're distributing more content, be able to share our lessons learned, forming partnerships to make it easier for the next app developers coming into the space, and also participating in some of the open source projects that are out there too. Now, I won't dwell on community too much, but instead, let's focus on user experience and infrastructure and how this really impacts getting to that 10,000 user base for your application. So to do that, I'd love to highlight SKALE and a few other partnerships that help make this possible. And if you haven't heard of SKALE or know what we do, essentially, we are a layer 2 solution that allows you to speed up your transactions and also lower your costs. But it doesn't just end there. It's more of a platform that does so much more. You're able to set one set cost up front, because when you decide to sign up for SKALE, instead of having to pay per transactions or have your end users pay per transactions, instead you might pay a set cost every month that then allows you to use maybe 16 transactions per second, all the way up to 2,000 transactions per second for your end users. What that means for your end users is that they don't have to worry about incurring that cost or what that cost would be at the time that they're using your application. But it does a lot more than that too. There's file storage. We also make sure to incorporate fixing privacy concerns, and in the future, helping you with machine learning. So let's say that right now you just want to store decentralized files such as HTML, JavaScript, or even a trained machine learning model. You can do that within SKALE. In the future, you'll be able to use that trained model and actually run, maybe prediction analytics or do data filtering on your sidechain to make sure that you're storing the right content there for your end users. Now, all of this is built on top of the Ethereum ecosystem. And so what that means is that we're not looking to be an Ethereum killer. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Instead, SKALE has smart contracts that are deployed to Ethereum that power and help make sure that the SKALE ecosystem runs well. And so in a way, we're able to make sure that we're empowering the Ethereum ecosystem, but also allowing developers to interact with both. So in that case, let's say that you're managing tokens, ERC20 or ERC721, you can do that within the SKALE system, but for your end users, also take away that gas costs, and also make it faster for them too. Now, we can't do this alone though, because with any other system, you need partners along the way. And so these are a few that we've sought out partnerships with to make sure that dApp developers get what they need as far as solving some of these scalability issues that we mentioned for your application. And so there's API-based wallets, there's analytics, there's also oracles that allow you to interact with APIs or other internet resources that you would like to bring into your smart contracts deployed into your blockchain. All of this creates an ecosystem for dApp developers to rely on and make sure that they're able to empower and improve their applications. So how does SKALE and these partners help you scale your applications? Well, let's take a look back at that slide again. And I want to make sure to highlight a few things that we could do differently. So, using some of those partners such as Portis, Bitsky, Fortmatic, and Taurus, that onboarding flow can be streamlined. And so by just using that partner, instead of having to rely on your end user understanding how to connect a wallet, get a wallet, understand transactions, you can rely on another solution such as these API-based wallets to make it so that way your onboarding flow is seamless. So instead of understanding wallets, they only have to rely on normal logins such as email and password that they're used to. But for the rest of it, that's where SKALE can definitely fit in. With transaction speed and gas costs, we want to make sure that we are making the application have a really good user experience for the end users. And through SKALE, by deploying your application there, you'll be able to speed up your Ethereum-based smart contracts directly within that system. The same thing goes for infrastructure. A lot of these partners, as well as SKALE, one of the things that they're working on is making sure that it's as private and as secure as you would expect. And one of the things that we're working on is making sure that we can be as interoperable with all of these other projects as you're building out your application. So instead of running into the same issues that I did when I first entered the space, you won't have to deal with that friction of having that bad user experience that makes you not want to tinker or build within blockchain. Instead, the space has come definitely a long way to improve the experience for dApp developers and end users alike. So how does this fit within your application? So let's say you have your application and you do deploy it onto Scale. When you deploy it onto Scale, what you'll be able to do is save on transaction costs and also increase your smart contracts. But using the other partners, you'll be able to power your application to go a lot further. And one of the things I definitely want to highlight is that to solve for user experience, infrastructure, and community, each one of these different projects, and these are just a few to name, are just one piece of the puzzle to make it easier for you to scale your application and increase your user growth. But the space has grown so much. And so what we're trying to do, it's going to be encouraging to see that as new developers build within the blockchain tech, that a lot of the previous issues that you experience will not impact your user growth. And so for you, you'll be able to take your application and definitely grow it to 10,000 users. Now, if you want to find out more, all you have to do is definitely check out our website at scale.network. But as I mentioned before, I got my start from Consensus Academy. So I definitely encourage you to also check out the Consensus Academy, because you'll learn a lot about all the different projects within the space, how to tie them together, and what new problems that are existing that are still left to be solved. So again, thank you all for your time, and looking forward to working with you in the space. Bye.